Have you ever wondered what it would take to stop a train carrying millions in cash, hijack in the dead of night, and vanish without a trace? Today, we dive into the story of one of the most daring robberies the world has ever seen. A heist so audacious, so meticulously executed, it left investigators humiliated and governments shaken. This is the Great Train Robbery that stunned the world. Stick around to the end, because you'll be left asking yourself, was this genius or a curse none of the robbers could escape? It began with whispers. The kind of whispers that slithered through smoky pubs and dim betting shops in late 1960s London. Banks moved mountains of cash each week, and security lagged behind technology. Cash wasn't just numbers. It was tangible, heavy, stuffed in crates and bags that traveled by armored train. Those trains were the arteries of Britain's economy, and to most men, robbing one was absurd. To Charles Hawthorne, it was destiny. Charles was unlike the bruisers who dominated the London underworld. Born in East London to a family scraping by after the war, he grew up amid ration cards and hunger. The army shaped him into something sharper. He served in North Africa, where he mastered logistics, precision, and discipline. When he returned, Britain offered him only meager jobs, wages too small for ambition. By the 1960s, Charles had carved out a place in the shadows, not as a thug, but as a strategist. They called him the architect. He had an eye for weakness, for cracks in systems people thought unbreakable. One night, sitting in a smoky pub corner, he overheard a drunk railway clerk bragging about a Royal Mail train. It would be carrying old banknotes, millions in cash, bound for London to be destroyed. The clerk laughed it off, but Charles felt his pulse quicken. The train would carry over 2.6 million pounds, over $50 million in today's money. To anyone else, it was drunken chatter. To Charles, it was opportunity. The idea was outrageous. A moving train in the dead of night, protected by postal guards. But Charles saw what others didn't: predictability. These trains followed rigid timetables. The guards weren't soldiers. They were clerks. The assumption was that no one would dare attack a train in motion. But Charles began studying the routes, noting stretches of track where the world went silent. No towns, no villages, no prying eyes. There, a single red signal could bring an empire to its knees. Charles knew he needed a crew, not of loyal friends, but of skilled men hungry for wealth. His first recruit was Eddie the driver, Malone, wiry and sharp-eyed, with nerves of steel. Eddie could vanish through London's alleys at breakneck speed, and he had a reputation for never losing his cool. Then came Victor Kane, a hulking brute whose fists had settled countless disputes in London's underground. Victor wasn't clever, but his loyalty to money made him reliable muscle. Next was Thomas Avery, a locksmith with hands delicate enough to crack safes as if they were toys. He could turn stubborn metal into whispers. Finally, there was Michael Dunn, the quiet Irishman. No one knew how he got his information, but he always seemed to know things he shouldn't. Which cops were on the take, which officials could be bribed, and which schedules were real. Some said he had friends high up. Others said he was just lucky. Charles didn't care. Michael was valuable. The crew grew to 15, each chosen for a role. They weren't bound by brotherhood, only greed and desperation. Charles gathered them in a derelict warehouse, maps spread across tables, timetables pinned to walls. He spoke with calm conviction. "One night," he said. "That's all it is. One night, and you'll never have to work again. But you follow my plan. Every step, every second. No freelancing. No mistakes. You do your part and you'll walk away rich." The silence that followed was heavy, but the fire in her eyes was enough. The target was set. August. A Royal Mail train leaving Glasgow, bound for London. Its cargo, millions in old notes, ready for destruction. Charles identified the perfect location. Ledburn, a lonely stretch of countryside. There, in the misty dark, they would rig the signal system to display a false red light. The train would stop. The crew would strike. In and out in under 30 minutes. Simple, brilliant, terrifying. The night of the heist was drenched in fog. The countryside felt unreal, swallowed in silence. The men wore gloves, masks, and dark clothes that would leave nothing behind. Trucks and vans waited on hidden roads. Their engines cold, drivers tense. Eddie knew the routes by heart. Every winding lane to escape the main roads. Charles stood by the signal box, checking his watch. Midnight crept past. With a nod, Michael climbed up and switched the green lamp for red. The trap was set. At 3:02 a.m., the low rumble arrived. A sound like distant thunder, growing louder. The Royal Mail train cut through the mist, its bulk unstoppable. Inside, postal clerks dozed beside bags of cash, unaware of the fate ahead. The red light glowed. Brakes screeched. Sparks spat into the fog. The train groaned to a halt. For a single heartbeat, silence hung. Then the shadows came alive. Victor and two men stormed the engine, dragging the driver from his seat. He fought back, but a savage blow silenced him. Charles climbed aboard, voice sharp as steel. "Move!" he barked. Eddie reversed the truck to the rails, headlights off. Men swarmed the mail cars, cutters in hand. One by one, heavy bags of cash were passed down the chain, from train to tarpaulin to truck. They moved like ghosts, swift and precise. Every second felt like an eternity, but they worked with frightening efficiency. In less than half an hour, dozens of bags were gone. The guards were bound, shaken but unharmed, staring wide-eyed at the thieves. Charles gave a sharp whistle. Engines roared to life. In minutes, the mist swallowed the convoy. For the first time, Charles allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stolen the unstealable. The farmhouse at Hunter's Moor became their sanctuary. 30 miles from the scene, it was remote, hidden by thick fields. Cash was stacked like bricks in the living room. Bundles covered tables and chairs. For men who had lived their lives scraping for scraps, the sight was intoxicating. They drank, gambled, and laughed among mountains of money. Charles demanded discipline. Gloves. Silence. Caution. But his voice was drowned out by greed. By dawn, the heist dominated headlines. The crime of the century. The papers screamed. The Prime Minister demanded answers. Police scrambled entire task forces. Roadblocks were set. Every known criminal in London was watched. The world was stunned. How could 15 men stop a train and vanish with millions without firing a single shot? But even perfect phantoms leave traces. The first crack came quickly. An abandoned truck was found, still holding discarded mail bags. Forensics pulled fingerprints. Whispers on the street led detectives to sudden bursts of wealth among petty crooks. Then came Hunter's Moor. When police raided it, the robbers were gone, but evidence wasn't. Food wrappers, fingerprints, careless traces of revelry. The perfect crime had begun to unravel. The police hunt turned relentless. Scotland Yard poured resources into the chase, every detective hungry to crack the crime that embarrassed the nation. Photos of suspects were plastered across stations. Informants were squeezed. And slowly, names began to emerge. Charles Hawthorne, the architect, became the whispered mastermind, the shadow pulling the strings. For investigators, catching him became an obsession. Eddie, the driver, was the first to fall. He was spotted in London, swaggering with new clothes and cash he couldn't explain. He tried to launder money through a casino owner, but greed betrayed him. One late night, detectives stormed the club, dragging him out while the tables fell silent. Eddie fought, but when the cuffs snapped shut, his fate was sealed. He would never drive free again. Thomas Avery tried his luck abroad. He fled to Spain, believing distance would shield him. But paranoia trailed him like a shadow. A jealous lover whispered his secrets to the wrong ears. Spanish police closed in, handing him over to British authorities. In interrogation rooms, his delicate hands shook, not from locks this time, but from the weight of betrayal. Victor Kane refused to be taken alive. When officers cornered him in Brighton, he drew a pistol, bellowing like a beast cornered in a cage. Bullets cracked the air. The standoff ended in blood. Victor lay sprawled on the pavement, defiance frozen in his dead eyes. For the crew, his end was both warning and prophecy. No one could outrun justice forever. Others scattered like frightened crows. Some tried to vanish into ordinary lives, hiding their wealth, disguising their pasts. But whispers betrayed them, a man flashing cash too easily, another settling debts too quickly. Scotland Yard tightened its net, dragging men from beds, pubs, and hideouts. Each arrest was paraded before the press, proof that the system had not been humiliated for good. And yet, not all were caught. Michael Dunn, the quiet Irishman, vanished. Some swore they saw him in South America, sipping rum under palm trees, fat on his cut. Others believed darker tales, that he never made it out, silenced by his own crew, buried in some forgotten field. The truth became legend, his ghost haunting every theory about the heist. But it was Charles Hawthorne who fascinated the world most. The architect had vanished. Rumors swirled like smoke. Some said he was in Belgium under a false name. Others claimed to have seen him in the Caribbean, an old man watching the waves, still haunted by that single night. Scotland Yard hunted him for years, but Charles became a myth, a man who outsmarted the empire and melted into the mist. Meanwhile, the money itself scattered like seeds in the wind. A few bundles surfaced in banks, traced to laundering schemes. Some cash slipped into black markets, exchanged for weapons, drugs, and silence. But the majority? Gone. Was it buried beneath fields? Hidden behind false walls? Burned when it became too dangerous to spend? The mystery turned the money into a phantom fortune. Trials gripped the nation. Courtrooms packed with reporters. The public eager to see the men behind the masks. The captured robbers sat in the dock, expressions ranging from defiance to despair. Prosecutors painted them as villains who mocked the state. Defense lawyers spun tales of working-class men striking back against a system stacked against them. Juries leaned toward outrage. Sentences fell heavy, decades long. For many, prison became a coffin. But the legend of the robbery grew larger than any verdict. Films, books, and whispers painted the crew as both criminals and folk heroes. Men who dared to do what others only dreamed of, stop a train, plunder millions, and vanish into the night. The heist became more than crime. It became myth, woven into the fabric of Britain's history, like a scar too deep to heal. For the families of the men, the aftermath was brutal. Wives faced police raids. Children grew up under shadows of shame. Some lived off hidden money, others off scraps. The price of ambition was paid not just by the robbers, but by everyone they left behind. The world admired the heist, but forgot the broken lives it left in its wake. And still, Charles remained untouchable. Detectives obsessed over him, building files thicker than books. But no matter how many leads they chased, he remained a phantom. Some claimed he died penniless, buried in a nameless grave. Others swore he bought paradise with stolen bills. The uncertainty made him eternal, a ghost mastermind no one could pin down. As decades passed, treasure hunters emerged. Men with metal detectors scoured fields near Ledburn, convinced the money was buried beneath their boots. Old barns were torn apart by fortune seekers. Each bundle of marked bills that surfaced reignited the fever. Could the bulk of the millions still lie hidden, waiting for someone bold enough to claim it? The robbery's brilliance was also its curse. Those who touched the money seemed doomed. Eddie rotted in prison, bitter and broken. Thomas never adjusted to life after release, always looking over his shoulder. Victor's corpse became a cautionary tale. Even the ones who escaped, if they did, lived as shadows, unable to ever spend freely, haunted by the weight of fortune. For the world, though, the heist was unforgettable. It wasn't the violence, it was the lack of it. Not a single shot fired during the robbery itself. Precision, discipline, audacity. A handful of ordinary men had humiliated a system that thought itself invincible. It was a reminder that even the most powerful can be undone by courage and calculation. So what truly happened to Charles Hawthorne? Did the architect escape with millions and live his final years on some sunlit beach, sipping rum as the tide erased his footprints? Or did he die alone, stripped of wealth, his genius fading into obscurity? Did Michael Dunn live fat on his cut, or was he buried under silence by the very men he once trusted? And what of the money? Could millions still lie beneath English soil, wrapped in tarpaulin, waiting for the day some farmer's plow strikes fortune? Or was it long ago destroyed, its ashes scattered in the wind, erasing the last trace of the crime of the century? The questions remain unanswered, and perhaps that is why the legend endures. Because the Great Train Robbery was never just about the cash. It was about defiance, ambition, and the audacity of men who dare the impossible. It was about greed and betrayal, discipline and downfall. It was about the razor-thin line between genius and ruin. And it was about the truth we may never know. The fates of men who gambled everything on a single night. So I'll leave you with this. What do you believe? Did Charles Hawthorne live rich and free, or die forgotten and cursed? Did the robbers escape justice, or did justice find them in its own way? And most importantly, if most of the money was never found, could it still be out there, waiting for someone daring enough to uncover it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was this the greatest heist in history, or the greatest cautionary tale? And if stories like this grip you as much as they grip me, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because there are more unbelievable true crime stories on the way.